another one it's used good for is your error catching. The error catching in that once you have that error catching form or that error catching function, which I showed you here, it's actually in the it's actually in your homework assignment. It has the error catching function, I believe, for that. Let me pull that up here real quick. Let me see, XAMPP, htdocs, web290, labs, week 8. Yeah, that one I don't know. I think I gave you guys the form one for your. You guys have the form one for the lab. Let me see what the project is for that one. Okay, I'm going to make sure and give you guys this lab one because it has the validation, the error validation, which you'll probably want. I'll upload that one. I'm going to upload that to week 8 for you. Give me a second here. So the whole purpose of this is to do, number one, error catching. Number two, selecting or data from forms that users create. Those two uses, you can use your SMTP server through Gmail just fine. It works great. I've used it for years, and Gmail lets developers use it at no cost, and anyone, for that matter of fact, can use it at no cost. So I'm going to make sure and upload inside of week 8 practice lab. I'm going to put underneath source code, the lab part, I'm going to put error catch files. I'll put error catch files. Let me upload those. It's a zip file. Did that work when you did the password? No. It might be blocking it possibly, but the only thing I would say is you can create, I've had issues with older Gmail accounts. You might create a new Gmail account. Sometimes that works. Let's see. Okay, I just updated the in-class practice lab to have the error catch files. The error catch files are different than the form files. Let me show you that while you're changing your password to something different. It's a little different than the form one, the error catching one. That up. Let's see what else we're going to open up on that one. Okay. So I've got here I've actually got two error exceptions for you in here. One's called error.php that has my email information in it. You have to change it to as far as your email address. So I have error.php. The other exception, I have that one as well in there, which has just the same one, except I call the function in there grabber, just showing you how you can name it whatever you want to name it. And basically you just put the function for that error catch somewhere in your page, okay? You call it somewhere in your page, or if you didn't want to put it in your page, what else could we do with that function? grabber? What could we do besides put it in every page? What could we do? Yeah, I can include it, right? I can include it in every one of my pages. I can include whatever file I put this in. I can include that file into this file with an include statement, which I believe on the, so I could do it like this one right here. This include error.php. I'm including that. And so inside of that has everything I need to send the email address or to send the mail to wherever. In the exception one, exception 2.php. But even though on this one here, I'm including the error.php, I'm using in the code, just to show you, a set handler called handler in the code itself though, all right? So an include statement would be the best way to use it. So in the one I just uploaded for you in the in class, the error catch, it's got a couple good error functions for you that you can use in any website actually. And then, so yeah, use that to your heart's content as far as the catcher or the catches. And to see how they work, you can basically do what I did here. You can force an error. This one here is using a substring count error replacement on this one. This is what the other exception.php. Let me go there and see what that one looks like real quick. That's in the web290. Web290 labs. And week 8, the other exception. Here's what that one looks like. It says page error, some errors have occurred. Please contact the administrator. If you click on that, it would be my email address here on campus. Then it actually gives you in that one the generated message to show you what it would, this was the message you basically saw in the email. And that's one error message you could do if it's like an internal, while testing your app type thing, maybe it might be a good idea to do that. You wouldn't want this to be production though. This would be like while you're testing type thing. But when it goes production, you can still keep those error catches in place. This one's echoing everything out to the screen, because when it goes to that function grabber, you'll notice what it's doing on that grabber is it's bringing in everything, echoing it out to the screen, but it's not emailing anything at all for the grabber. It's just showing it to the screen and putting a link to the user to contact. So to save email, save your inbox from being junked up, if you got a group of 4 or 5 developers, you can do this. But then when you turn it on for production, you would want something a little bit better as far as error catch, to where it's actually catching the error and emailing it to the user. Okay, and that would be done by using the include statement for error.php, because it's going to process that error with the type, error message, file name, and error file by using that include statement at the top. Okay? And so this is definitely a better looking one. And remember, it looked a little bit, let's see what that one was. That was the error exception 2, I believe. No. Yeah, it was error exception 2. I kicked this out on the screen so you could see it. So that's what it looked like. But this, all the user sees is basically right up here. That's all they're going to see. This is what would be emailed to them. Okay? So that is the practice lab catch files for you. But you can start if you have issues with Gmail, basically it's usually Like she had one, I think everybody else got connected up here in the front. Yours was probably the older Gmail, possibly, I don't know. Usually when I have issues, I just create a brand new Gmail account, and that usually fixes it. It does take time on a new Gmail account, though, sometimes like an hour or two, to be able to use it as SMTP. But they generally have anywhere from 100, 150 emails a day that lets you use on SMTP server through Gmail. So it works pretty good. But there is a form here I wanted to read before we go any further on the reading part on error handling. Not real long, just a few pages here on error handling. I'm going to download this real quick. So again, error handling is used a lot in development for catching errors, catching user input errors. Could be programming errors sometimes it catches as well. Okay, let's go to full screen. So there's going to be 12 unique error types that it can catch, which can be grouped into 3 main categories in PHP. There's informational catches, called notices, actionable, called warnings, and fatal, meaning it cannot go anywhere else without it being fixed. Informational errors are harmless, can be avoided through explicit programming. Example, maybe you have a use of an undefined variable defining a string without quotes or something, and it gives you an informational error message. Actionable errors indicate that something clearly is wrong, has happened, like a file's not present, database not available, database password wrong, username password wrong could be one, missing a function argument, etc. Fatal errors, something terrible has happened during execution of your script that further processing simply cannot continue. Parsing error on this one, calling an undefined function, or in the examples I gave on the exception 2.php was giving 2 parameters instead of 3 parameters for a PHP function. So there are some codes at the top that you can use at the top of your code to call specific errors, like eStrict is a feature or behavior was depreciated in PHP 5, so it's no longer used. eNotice, this one detects a situation that could indicate a problem but might be normal. eUserNotice, the user triggered this notice. eWarning, an actionable error occurred during execution. eUserWarning, the user triggered warning. eCompile warning, error occurred during script compilation. This is unusual. eCore warning, the PHP engine has a problem. Something's wrong with your PHP engine. Usually needs restarted or something. eError, unrecoverable error in PHP. eUser error, user trigger fatal error. eCompile error, critical error occurred while reading a script, trying to read a script. eCore error, engine problem startup on PHP. eParse error, raised during compilation in response to syntax. So it is possible to cause PHP at any point in your program to trigger an error by calling this right here. You can literally trigger any error you want to by just doing trigger error, the message and type. And so an example here would be if you wanted to do, if a database doesn't connect, you want to trigger an error that says DB connect failed, eUser error would prompt that. eUser error trigger to prompt up on the screen, DB connect failed message, eUser error would be an exclamation point. This is just a flowchart for PHP error handling. You've got at the top level different types of ways errors can be generated. And then you have below that if-else type of logic for those type of errors. Custom error handling, like we went over tonight, generally how PHP programmers handle errors within your code. It's defined by various constants in the PHP.ini. There are also several things you can control in your scripts, however, like I went over tonight in the code examples I gave you with the error.php files. You can, though, top level set error reporting to say no on error reporting. Now, this wouldn't stop reporting fatal errors, but anything below fatal errors, like script errors or JavaScript or whatever, browser-specific type errors. This function can be used to control which errors are displayed, which errors are simply ignored. The effect only lasts for the duration of that one page that you're on or whatever function it's on. And so it's error reporting, then whatever level you want. Here's some examples of levels. 0 would be turning off all error reporting altogether. This is useful if you have an old PHP app that you don't want to spend a lot of time converting variables that have changed over iterations of PHP, but everything still works fine. You can do that with error reporting 0. I've done that with older apps. I don't want to go through thousands of pages of code to fix a variable name because they changed it over different iterations of PHP. Does that make sense on life cycle? I've done that. Reporting simple error, runtime errors. So error reporting error, warning, parse. This means it would only report these errors only found in the application on that page. Reporting notice can be good too, like to report uninitialized variables or catch variable name misspellings. You would do error, warning, parse, notice. Reporting all errors, but except for notice, it would be that one. All, notice. Reporting all PHP errors, _all, reports all. Now it says here in bold underscore, hiding errors is not a solution to problem. So when you're first developing, you definitely don't want to hide errors. You want to show all errors. The only time I've ever hidden errors, again, it's an antiquated app, and I don't want to upgrade it to the new PHP 5, and everything works fine. I'll hide in that case, but when you're developing new apps, you don't want to hide errors. It's useful, however, to hide errors on a live server, like I just mentioned. While developing and debugging code, displaying all errors is highly recommended so you can see what in the world's going on. If you hide them and you can't see them, you can't fix them. Okay? But if you can see them, you may be able to fix them. And there is cases where maybe you can't fix them or you don't want to spend time fixing them. That's when hiding the errors come in play. And generally errors are going to be warnings, maybe not errors, not critical errors, just warnings. And it's usually on syntax, or not syntax, on the evolution of PHP usage of functions or internal names or whatever the case may be is usually where you'll come against that. Suppressing error, the special @ operator can be used to suppress function errors. Any error produced by the function is suppressed and not displayed by PHP, regardless of the error reporting setting. So, MySQL is an example. DB equals MySQL connects HUP, host username password. If the database doesn't exist, trigger, blah, whatever, user report. All right. The attempt to connect to the database, the suppress error notice if it fails. It will suppress the error notice if it fails altogether. Since the error is suppressed, it must handle gracefully somehow what just happened. That's why you would do a trigger event here to prompt the user, hey, username password doesn't work or cannot connect to database, usually is what you put here in the case of a connection error. Again, error expression not solution. It can be helpful to locally define your own error handling mechanism. We already went over that. You can write your own error handling function. Giving you some examples this week already to download in the in-class. You simply need to write a function with appropriate inputs, register it as a script as an error handler. The handler function should be able to return 4 arguments and return the true or to indicate as handled the error. So, example, the 4 is always error code, error message, file itself, and the line number itself. And that's really helpful, by the way, when it comes to developing apps, any apps whatsoever, doesn't matter what it is. I develop in PHP, develop in VB, develop in iOS. All these development platforms have ways to catch errors, right? This is how PHP catches errors. VB does the same thing, C# does the same thing, C++ does the same thing. The difference is they have what's called IntelliSense in those programs I just mentioned that tells you in the developer app where it's found, where the error is found, what line it's found on, and you just go to it. Here, you have to create a function to make it nicer for as a developer to find stuff. What's great about it is if you got this in an email, which in my apps I develop over the years, you get hopefully they go fewer and fewer in emails, but if you get an email error, what's great about it is you know exactly where that file is, exactly what line it came from, and what the error message was. Now, what I do in Windows application development is a step further. I will actually do a screenshot, which you can't do in PHP, but in Windows development, I'll actually do a screenshot of that monitor at the exact time when the error occurred. And so I see the screenshot of what they were doing at the time, along with behind the scenes code and that error, along with the line and what file it was found on. That's real helpful. Because it's very helpful too if a lot of times if it's user input error, this is very helpful for developers, because sometimes they'll be like, well, I uploaded the JPEG or document that it was supposed to be, and you look at the screenshot and they're uploading a zip file. And they, well, how'd you know that? Because what I do with it, they actually get it in their inbox, and it also goes to developers both, but they don't ever read their inbox. And so when you refer back to their inbox, we'll go ahead and open that up. I'll say, maybe it's just me, but it looks like a zip file that you're opening up there. And they'll look at, oh yeah, it was a zip file. And so it helps too as a developer a lot of times, especially if it's user error, the screenshot thing helps. Well, PHP, you don't have such a creature, but if you ever do any Windows stuff, I do recommend doing that. That's nice to have in your inbox as a screenshot of what's going on. I guess you could create a JavaScript app maybe to do that function screenshot, possibly, I don't know. Maybe play around with that. It might be possible to do. It'd be cool to have that. But anyway, 4 functions: error code, error message, file, and line number, and then echo them out and return a true statement, if that's the case, back to whatever error handler, in this case called error handler. So the handler 4 inputs: the code, error code, message, file where it occurred, and the line on which the error occurred. Any PHP statements can then be executed. The return true lets PHP know that a custom error handler has handled that error okay, so do not put your own PHP ugly message on the browser. That's what it's telling the compiler. We've already handled it. Do not try it yourself, PHP, whatever version of PHP it might be. And on the example we did tonight, one thing you make sure when you use an error handler of your own, the custom error handler, you just set it with that name right there, set error handler, with underscores underneath each word, in between each word. Then the name of the error handler. You can mask the custom error handler so it only receives a certain type of error, which I don't recommend. I like to have all of them in there as a developer. I want to know everything. But you can, if you want to, trigger just certain ones. Even I don't recommend, just do all of them, and you got all of them in your inbox to look at later. A custom error handler has never passed these variables: parse error, core error, compile error. These are critical errors, and they're too dangerous to be passed, and they, generally in that case we'll get a call from users that you're having issues, or you will know yourself prior to the users calling, because internal issues will happen as well usually on that. This is often used in conjunction with a debug flag for neat combination of debug and production code display. All that's saying there is basically, like we showed a few examples tonight in the in-class exercise, where you see the nice message at the top, but you also see the developer message at the bottom during debug time. But during live production code time, you would take out that message below the pretty message and only reserve that for email for the developers to get. Various types of error types exist in PHP. As review, we went over a number of them. The error handling system is highly flexible. I do recommend developing your own error handler and then just reusing it, and you're more than welcome to use the in-class example I gave this week and tweak it to your own settings in your own area, your own business. So that's the notes on PHP error handler. Now let's go to homework. Week 8, believe it or not, a few more weeks. Actually, week 12, you start working full-fledged on your final application. For the homework this week, you're doing the email form validation, one we actually did in class, you're doing at home, so you already got to jump on it. If you have issues, I put in here a number of different configuration issues you might have. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. But if you leave it just as it is and watch this video on line 4, I have a YouTube video already out here, you should be fine, shouldn't have any problems. It will for sure probably work localhost for you. Uploading it to 00 webhost might not work, but that's okay for this week. When you email me your code, as always, I will get your localhost code anyway. So just tell me during when you guys submit me your stuff this week, it says here on line 4, upload and link it as always in week 8. If you can't get it to work on your external, which you might not be able to on 00 webhost, don't worry about it. Just don't even do it. Just say couldn't get it to work on external and just submit it locally, your zip file, that's fine. And I can run it on my end. And what I'll run it with, make sure when you submit it to me, X out your credentials, your Gmail credentials, and I'll put in mine when I test it. Does that make sense? If you could do that. Otherwise, I can get in your email. Okay? So make sure and X out your credentials. That would be great. As always, there's a link to the upload to external host. And I do want to cover one last thing here as far as upcoming stuff and then getting you ready for your final website push. Next week is week 9. We're going to be covering string manipulations and input validation, which is real important for any type of PHP app. Then week 10, we go into PHP profiles. That's actually taking a week 3 app that we created and looked at for CMS. And that's a full-fledged CMS on week 10. And in that week, you're able to add in 3 or 4 modules of your own, like a weather module maybe, or a maps module, or a games module. Show you how all that works. Week 11, you get to play around with multiple prefabbed image galleries in PHP. You could build your own image galleries, but there's no reason to. There's so many nice prepackaged PHP galleries out there. I wouldn't recommend spending time doing it. You're reinventing the wheel. I'll give you some examples I like, and then you can create your image gallery on week 11. Week 12, you actually start working on your final site. On weeks 12 and 13 and 14, I will be in here all 3 weeks to help you. I'll bring in textbooks those weeks. I'll also have in those weeks examples for you, more examples. If you need it, I can give to you for your unique final website. And remember, your final website can either be a personal website, it can be something for your workplace, something you've always wanted to do. PHP is definitely going to be a part of it, but it could also be wrapped around. You could have in there HTML5. You could have in there some, jQuery. Whatever else you want to put in there is fine. I don't care. Just as long as you have there's some components we'll go over in week 12 that you have to have for your final site, but not a lot of restrictions there. I want you to be able to use this at the end of the presentation. So on weeks 12, 13, and 14, I will be here. You're not required to be here those nights unless you want to come for help, but I will be here all 3 nights. On week 15, I need everybody to be here because I need to check everybody's work off. I'm going to even ask the online folks to come that night just to make sure to stop in for 5-10 minutes to make sure you have all your ducks in a row for your final presentation on week 16, because I'll have a little checkbox thing to check off for you on everything to make sure you got everything. And that's it. Week 16, we'll give a presentation in here. I will buy the pizza. You guys will bring in whatever snacks you want to bring in, and then we are done with PHP for the semester. Now, I did want to mention we do have a local firm, Lions PHP, that does hire interns for PHP. If you're interested in doing an internship, I believe I asked the first couple weeks in class, and I told you I'd ask you again around October-ish time, which we're there. So if you are interested in an internship, give me an email and just say I'm interested. They usually use students anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week. It is paid internship, meaning it's usually 10 to 15 bucks an hour for 15, 20 hours a week, and they do work around your school schedule. And so if you are interested or know somebody's interested in a PHP internship, they are local here in Rockford. They just moved to a brand new building, and we've got 4 of our PHP students actually that came through this class that work there now full time. And so it's a real great company. They're out of Texas originally, and they work on a platform called Magenta that they use for PHP, but they train you in that and give you certified in that. Send you to Chicago to learn their platform for Magenta. And but yeah, they're kind of like a Google platform is how they function. You get like 80% of the day's work, 20% is whatever you want to do to work on creatively, you know, for your own personal growth, things like that. And so, you know, they just recently did employees were posting pictures of themselves when they're younger and sharing fun stories about their family and stuff like that. So that's the kind of company it is. So, you know, real laid back. So if you're interested, I definitely recommend it if you don't have a job, or if you're going to go into programming PHP full time, I definitely recommend it. And you don't have to leave and go to Madison or Chicago, that's where you would have to go if you wanted to program PHP full time usually, is Madison, Chicago area. As far as, you know, good amount of jobs. Not to say you couldn't get jobs around Rockford, but PHP is definitely, yeah, he rolled his eyes back there. PHP is definitely hard to find a really good PHP job around this area. So, but Lions is a growing firm. They generally hire anywhere from, on average, the last 4 years have been hiring 3 to 4 new developers. That's pretty good for a small firm to do that. So if you're interested, give me an email. Otherwise, we are done for the week. And also, I did email everybody, I believe in here, I think I gave you guys an email. We do have a breakfast tomorrow morning at 7:30 to 8:30. If you want, I got your email, by the way, and your suggestions. Thank you. Yeah, 7:30 to 8:30. I know it's kind of early. But if you do want to come, it's free breakfast. You can not say anything and just sit there. It's basically local businesses come to this event, and we give kind of what we're doing as a division, classes we're teaching, and then we ask them, the businesses, what we need to be teaching. More stuff, you know, like that's where WordPress came out of last summer, was that group. Anything else that you have ideas for, shoot them out, and we meet in little groups and kind of talk about it. So if you can make it, that'd be great. You don't have to, again, say anything when you come. You can just sit down and eat breakfast and leave. So, all right. If you have any questions about it, come up and see me. Otherwise, you guys have a great week.